You're 26. You work a job you didn't choose, for a boss you don't respect, in a building you'd burn down if the consequences didn't matter. Every Monday feels like a sentence. Every paycheck disappears before you finish counting it. Rent, food, the minimum payment on a debt that never actually gets smaller. You're not broke in the dramatic way. You're broke in the quiet way, the kind where you smile at people and say things are fine, because explaining the actual situation would take too long, and nobody really wants to hear it anyway. You have a laptop, a Wi-Fi connection, and approximately 4 hours every night where you're awake but have nothing to do except scroll through other people's lives and wonder where yours went wrong. This is where the story starts. Not with a big decision, not with a dramatic moment. Just a Tuesday night, a YouTube rabbit hole, and a comment under a video that says 3 words: look into Tor. You don't take it seriously at first. You close the tab, you open it again. You search, what is Tor, and spend the next 40 minutes reading. Then 2 hours. Then it's 3 a.m., and you know more about onion routing than you ever expected to. You tell yourself you're just curious. That's the first lie you tell yourself. There will be more. You download the browser. It takes 6 minutes. You open it, and the interface is ugly and slow and nothing like what you imagined. You sit there for a moment. You feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Not excitement exactly. More like the sensation of standing at the edge of something. You don't know what's on the other side, but you know the side you're currently on isn't working. You start reading forums, communities that exist specifically to explain how this world operates. There are rules here, etiquette, a whole ecosystem of people who move things from one place to another and have built an entire invisible economy around it. You learn about escrow systems, about vendor ratings, about PGP encryption, and why you should never, ever use your real name or address for anything. You learn about cryptocurrency, not the kind people tweet about hoping to get rich, the functional kind, the kind used specifically because it doesn't leave the same trail that a bank transfer does. You set up a wallet. It takes an evening. You fund it with cash, converted at a small exchange that doesn't ask questions. You tell yourself you're still just researching. That's the second lie. The first marketplace you find looks like a forum from 2009. The second one looks surprisingly professional. Vendor profiles, customer reviews, a rating system with more detail than most legitimate e-commerce sites. 5 stars for product quality, 5 stars for packaging, 5 stars for shipping speed. You find a vendor with 412 reviews and a 99.1% satisfaction rating. Their profile has been active for 2 years. They have a verified badge. They offer a product you recognize and a price that, compared to what you've heard people pay on the street, is almost insultingly cheap. You sit with your cursor hovering over the listing for a long time. You think about the reviews. Real people wrote those. Real people placed orders, received packages, left feedback. This isn't theoretical. This is a system that works. You place the order. You use a name that isn't yours and an address that is a P.O. box you opened with cash 3 days earlier because the forums said to. You encrypt the shipping details using a public key the vendor posted on their profile. You pay. The transaction takes 40 seconds. And then you wait. 7 days. You check the tracking number twice a day, even though it shows nothing. On day 8, a small padded envelope arrives at the P.O. box. You open it in your car. It is vacuum sealed. It is exactly what you ordered. The packaging is cleaner than you expected. There is a small handwritten note inside that says, "Thank you for your order." You sit in the parking lot for a while. You feel several things simultaneously. You feel the specific kind of clarity that only comes when something abstract becomes concrete. The dark web was a concept. Now it is a padded envelope in your hand. You also feel something else underneath the clarity. Something you will not name yet, because naming it would mean acknowledging it. That feeling is possibility. The package was not for personal use. That was never the plan. You already know 3 people who want exactly what you just received. You already know what they pay. You already did the math while you were waiting for the delivery. The margin is not large, but it is real. You divide the product carefully. You use a scale you bought with cash from a kitchen supply store. You text 3 people using a number registered to a prepaid SIM you activated at a gas station. The first sale happens within 2 hours. You are standing in a parking garage. The transaction takes less than 90 seconds. Afterward, you sit in your car and count the cash. You made back 3 times what you spent. You made it in 90 seconds. You compare that to the 8 hours you will spend tomorrow at a job that pays you less per hour than this parking garage just did. You do not make a decision right now, but something shifts. You tell yourself it's temporary, just until you save enough to have options. You set a number in your head. When you reach that number, you stop. The number keeps moving. It moves because the money comes faster than you planned. Week 2, you have 5 customers. Week 4, you have 11. You have not advertised. You have not told anyone to spread the word. Word spread on its own, because the product is consistent and the price is fair. And in this particular market, those 2 things are rare enough to be remarkable. You are still working your regular job. You sit in meetings and listen to your manager explain quarterly targets, and you nod and you say the right things, and inside your head, you are running a completely separate set of calculations. You know what you made last Tuesday. You know what you will make this Friday. You know the number in your savings account, which 3 weeks ago was a source of anxiety, and is now just a number you check the way you used to check a score. It grows. You are careful. You follow the rules you learned in the forums. No patterns, no routines. Never the same location twice in the same week. Never carry more than you need for a single day. Keep the product and the cash in separate locations. Tell no one anything they do not specifically need to know. You read about operational security the way other people your age read productivity blogs. You implement it the way other people implement morning routines. It becomes habit. It becomes instinct. Month 2, you clear more in a weekend than your monthly salary. You are still going to work on Monday. You are still responding to emails. You are still nodding in meetings. But the job feels different now. It used to feel like necessity. Now it feels like a costume. You wear it every day and take it off every evening. And the version of you that exists outside the costume is becoming more real than the version that wears it. You start to resent the commute. You start to resent the small indignities that come with working for someone else. The performance reviews, the approval requests, the culture of pretending that everyone is a team, when what you actually are is a collection of individuals performing compliance for a shared paycheck. You give your notice on a Thursday. You say you have a family situation. Your manager looks surprised and says he's sorry to hear that and asks if there's anything the company can do. You say, no thank you. You clean out your desk in 11 minutes. You walk to your car and you do not look back at the building. You feel something enormous. Not guilt, not fear. Something that feels uncomfortably close to freedom. With no job, your days restructure themselves around the operation. You are more organized than you have ever been. You maintain a ledger, encrypted, stored on a device that has never touched your home network. Every transaction logged, every expense tracked. You know your cost basis. You know your margins. You know which customers are reliable and which ones create friction. And you have quietly stopped serving the ones who create friction, because friction is risk, and risk is the one thing you cannot afford to be casual about. Your income has tripled since you quit. The math is simple. You were spending 40 hours a week performing a job. Now you spend 12 hours a week running something that earns significantly more. The remaining hours go into infrastructure, a second P.O. box in a different district, a more sophisticated approach to cryptocurrency conversion, a storage system so clean and compartmentalized that even if someone knew what to look for, they would struggle to find anything worth finding. You are good at this. That is the part that surprises you most. Not the money, though the money is real. The thing that surprises you is that you are genuinely skilled at the operational side, the logistics, the risk management, the customer relationships, if you can call them that. You have built something from nothing in less than 3 months, and it runs without friction and generates consistent returns. And you did it alone, with no funding and no guidance beyond forums and instinct. You think sometimes about what you could have done with this same capacity in a legitimate context. Then you stop thinking about it, because that thought leads somewhere uncomfortable. Your first real scare comes on a Friday night. A customer texts from a number you don't recognize. The message uses the right code word, but the phrasing is slightly off. You do not respond. You do not go to the location. You sit in your apartment for 2 hours, refreshing nothing, watching the clock, running through scenarios. Nothing happens. The number never texts again. It was probably nothing. A new phone. A small change in how someone types. But your hands were unsteady for most of that evening, and the feeling does not fully leave until the following Tuesday. You add a second verification step to your contact protocol. You do it that same night. The scare made you better. That is the logic you use to process it. You do not examine that logic too closely. By month 5, the operation has outgrown what one person can cleanly manage. You are not overwhelmed, but you are at capacity. You could stay here, take the ceiling as the ceiling, make consistent money indefinitely at this scale, and stay small enough to stay invisible. That is the safe choice. You know it is the safe choice. You make a different choice. You bring in one person, someone you have known for 11 years, someone whose judgment you trust in the specific way that only comes from a long shared history. You do not explain everything at once. You give him one role, one responsibility, a single node in the network. He does not know the full shape of what you've built. He knows his part. Compartmentalization, the same principle that makes intelligence agencies hard to penetrate. You pay him well, better than he was making before. He does not ask too many questions. That is one of the reasons you chose him. The operation scales. Month 6, you net more than you made in the previous 2 years of employment combined. You move apartments. Nothing dramatic, just an upgrade. A building with a doorman and a gym and enough ambient affluence that no one asks where the money comes from, because in buildings like this, everyone has quietly decided not to ask where the money comes from. You buy things with cash converted carefully into clean channels. You learn what money laundering actually looks like at a functional level, and it is less cinematic than television suggests and more bureaucratic than you expected. You have a consultation with a financial professional who asks fewer questions than he should. You begin to understand why certain types of businesses exist. Businesses with high transaction volume and irregular revenue, and no real way to verify the correlation between inputs and outputs. You file taxes. That part surprises people when they hear about it later. You file taxes. Not accurately, but you file them. You exist on paper as a person with income and expenses and a financial footprint that is not interesting to anyone who glances at it. You have built a life that looks ordinary from the outside. Inside, it is something else entirely. You know this. You have always known this. The question you stopped asking yourself, the question you buried sometime around month 3, is whether ordinary is still something you could find your way back to. On the good days, you don't miss it. On the other days, you don't let yourself think about it long enough to answer. The ending does not arrive the way you imagined it. You imagined a dramatic moment, a door kicked in, a confrontation, something with a clear before and after. What actually happens is quieter and in some ways worse. It starts with a name you don't recognize, mentioned by your partner during a conversation about a new connection he wants to bring in. You say no. You say the network is closed. He pushes back slightly, not aggressively, just noting that the volume opportunity is significant. You say no again. You move past it. 2 weeks later, the same name comes up in a different context. A mutual acquaintance mentions it without knowing they're mentioning it in relation to you. The name has connections you were not aware of, connections that run in a direction you have specifically and carefully avoided for the entire duration of this operation. You do not panic, but you begin to look. You spend 72 hours auditing everything, every node, every transaction pattern, every person who has a piece of information about any piece of what you've built. What you find is not evidence of a breach. What you find is proximity. You are closer to something dangerous than you realized, and you got there not through a mistake, but through the natural growth of a network that connects to other networks, whether you intend it to or not. You make a decision. You tell your partner the operation is pausing. You give him a number, enough to cover 6 months, enough to be fair. He does not argue. He has been watching you long enough to recognize when a decision has already been made. You spend 3 days moving everything that needs to move, converting what needs to be converted, eliminating what needs to be eliminated. On the 4th day, you sit in an apartment that looks like nothing happened in it, because you have made sure nothing could be found in it. You have a number in an account you can access from anywhere. The number is significant. It represents 2 years of your life, and a version of yourself you built from scratch, and a skill set that exists nowhere on any resume. Outside the window, the city continues its business. People are going to jobs. People are complaining about their commutes. People are nodding in meetings and checking their salaries and wondering if this is all there is. You used to be one of them. For 2 years, you were something else entirely. You are not sure yet what you are now, but you are still here. You are still thinking, and somewhere in the back of your mind, very quietly, you are already starting to wonder what comes next.